Let's... AmandaLand. 60-second headline. Gonna run down some news right quick.
Run it down, mama. Put us on.
Niko!
What's going on?
Can we center you just a little?
Where am I at? Where am I? I can be centered. There we go.
There you are. Oh my gosh, look at this chain. Are you going somewhere after this, or is this just for us?
Nah, I'm in the crib all day. I work from home. So, but I gotta dress for the part, or else I won't get up and do anything. So I gotta like dress as if I'm going to work to give myself motivation to do the work. Because once you've been working from home as long as I have, sometimes need the extra motivation.
Let me tell you, during the pandemic, I had to create a game in order to make myself get dressed for real, because I literally was the same way. It's like you're literally going from this room to this room. So I get online, you can get like a spinner, like, like a Wheel of Fortune spinner. And I will put in the spinner like all black, cord, shorts.
So funny enough, I've been working from home since about 2016, more or less. I had like odd jobs in between, but really from like 2017, 2018, I was exclusively working from home. But I lived in Miami during the pandemic. So like we were only shut down for like a month and some change, and we could go wherever we wanted to, but I was already working from home. So when everybody kind of was going through that weird shift of trying to work from home and finding the motivation, I had already gotten used to it. You really do have to, there are obviously benefits from working from home, but there is a shift in mindset. And I actually like read a book on like basically how to set up my ambiance and the environment. So like whenever I'm in a certain space in my home, like my brain switches like, okay, now you're in work mode. Here you're in relax mode. I learned not to bring my work to bed with me, which I had a really bad habit of doing for a long time. So, I had to kind of reprogram how I process work whenever I started working from home full time, because before I was just like an animal, like I never stopped. And I realized I wasn't healthy. I actually experienced burnout in 2020 for real. Yeah, it was 2020. I experienced burnout for the first time, and it's real.
What did it look like? What did burnout look like for you?
It went from doing probably 10 live streams a week to maybe 1 or 2, if I even had the energy to do that. I got depressed. I didn't even know I was depressed because I have ADHD. So I've experienced depression in like maybe hourly fits, but then it goes away. I never had an extended depression. So it was because
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, so it's a process basically. So when you have, depending on what type of ADHD you have, and unfortunately I have both types, you have a situation where you're a perfectionist.
Overachiever.
Yeah, that was basically my life. So you're a perfectionist, but because of your ADHD, you're inevitably going to make a mistake. And you get worried that will look like a reflection of your ability, but it's not a reflection of your ability because you're actually a perfectionist. So you end up in this like crippling paralysis where you can't do anything. And then that knowing that you can't do anything puts you in a temporary state of depression because you're not achieving your goals, nor are you doing anything to further your goals. So you end up, it's like a process. You get out of it eventually. And obviously if you go through therapy and you get medication, that helps. But yeah, I had experienced that my entire life. So whenever I actually experienced depression like that was consistent and frequent, I had no idea what was happening. And so that was whenever, two things happened. I discovered shrooms and I went to therapy. So probably the best thing that could have happened to me, because my whole perspective changed, because I didn't believe that. Funny enough that you was talking about this Uber driver who was like lives his life by logic instead of emotion. I didn't believe that I was capable of experience long-term depression because I'm so logical. And generally I'm good at solving problems in my life. But the problems that I needed to address were from my childhood, right?
This is what I told the brother in the car.
Yeah.
That's literally what I said to him.
Yeah, I mean, normally it's your inner, it's a combination.
Always.
Well, like your shadow self basically is what it's called in psychology.
Yes.
A combination of your inner child, your ego, and your trauma, the trauma of your past. And a lot of it isn't even you necessarily. Like it's just stuff that you experience.
Somebody else's shit that you've taken in. Because of course, I
Exactly.
was like, "What was your relationship with your mom?"
Exactly.
Well, I love my mom, but and I said, "There it is. It's right there. Just go there.
Oh
Go
yeah.
in the
Hey, look,
butt."
when you come from a black household,
Pause.
it's almost always a butt with your mom. And my relationship with my mom, we resolve all of our trauma like after I had my first, well, right before I had my first child. Like that was whenever I had to take it upon myself to be like, no, we need to resolve this now. Because I wanted my mom to be a part of my child's life. And she was always going to be a part of it. But like I didn't want that weird, awkward, we're not
Yep.
going to talk about our past, we're not going to address what happened, or rather, we're not going to be accountable for what we went through. Um,
Mm-hmm.
'Cause I don't want that type of relationship with her. And if our relationship is good, I know that I will be able to recognize whenever I'm doing something wrong when it comes to my kids. So, and so that's kind of like was I didn't know that depression, I could experience depression. I was aware of the temporary depression, but then I realized like, damn, somebody had said to me like during that period, they're like, yo, when was like the last time you cried? I was like, oh, I cry all the time. Like I cry when I'm happy. They're like, no, like for being sad. I was like, I don't know why. It's like, well, you don't think it's weird? And then I realized I had actually forgotten the emotional trigger to cry whenever I'm sad. I didn't know what it felt like. I couldn't even fake it like if I wanted to. I'm like, oh yeah, that's probably not healthy.
Fascinating.
Yeah. I didn't realize. Yeah, I know. It's crazy, right? I was like,
I can't even imagine not having the emotional trigger not to cry. I
yeah.
don't know what the emotional trigger not to cry is. Like I can't.
But it's
I
better to
have
cry.
no.
It's better to be able to cry. Like it's I had a lot of the things that helped me superar. What's the word for sorry, so I live in Rio. I'm fluent in Portuguese and my wife is Brazilian, so like the words that I would normally say in English, I was confused
Are coming
sometimes.
out and we love
Overcome,
it.
yeah. So I was able to
International.
overcome. There you go. Overcome a lot of problems in my life because I have like this. Like I'm a Capricorn, so like I'm very, very, very driven. And I just whenever I feel overwhelmed,
You're
I just
also
work.
super private.
That's good, when you're trying to overcome circumstances. But whenever you actually have time to sit down and think and process, it's not good because
Mm-mm.
I had a lot of unaddressed issues, not just with me and my mom, but with my dad. Even I didn't realize that like I had abandonment issues because we had, when you get the I had the oh you're the oldest brother, so responsibilities put on top of you. Which was fine because I could handle it. Well, but it wasn't fine because I realized I was being held to a double standard, and then my brother was reacting to me being held to a double standard because we're only a year and a half apart. He's like, "Why the hell can't
What?
responsibility be put on me? Why is he getting treated special?" And then my dad was actually a very, very good dad for like the first 6 or 7 years of my life. He was an amazing father, and it was kind of problematic because whenever he and my mom separated, and he moved to California when you're a
You knew what
kid,
you were
you're
missing.
not thinking about all the drama that goes into a marriage, especially a marriage that started at 18 years old. I was born when my mom was 19. Like she was a child, and so was my dad. And of course, there was drama that went on behind the scenes, but the only thing that happened that I recognized was my dad, for some reason, is now in California, and I'm in North Carolina, and he is largely responsible for anything that I had been successful at doing at the time. So my mom was under the impression I was just born that way. I knew that it was because of my dad. Everybody had put these expectations on me because of this person that my dad created, right? Because I was studying before I went to school. I studied after school. I played like 3 or 4 different sports. I was good at everything. But my mom just assumed it was natural because she was actually at work while my dad was doing all this. And I could never ever have a conversation with her about my father because it would trigger her. And now all hell's gonna break loose. So I had all this responsibility put on me, and on my mom. Everything I had learned because of interactions with my mom at the time. You can't complain about it. You just got to do it.
Yep.
Everything is expectation. If I get straight A's, it's because you're supposed to do that. Like
Yep.
I skipped my college graduation because I didn't understand the value of celebrating your achievements because my mom had instilled in me that's what you're supposed to do. I didn't realize till later, like, that's insane. I graduated from UNC. Like, I should have went. But I
I
was just
gotta
like,
tell you, I was gonna skip mine for the same reason, and my mom was actually like, "Well, I want to go because I was here."
Yeah, my
And it
mom
was on her
afterwards
birthday.
said that. But I'm like, you don't ever go to anything. You've never gone to anything, Mom. I didn't think that you would come. She's like, why wouldn't you think I would go to your college graduation? I'm like, because you never went. I was an all-state triple jumper. I was one of the best debaters in the country. I'm like, you never went to any of my award ceremonies. Why would I assume that you're going to go to this? Well, this is different. This is college. I'm like, that is some crazy logic, Mom. It's not different, actually. That's the problem. Like, but we addressed it, and it was really huge for both of us, honestly, because she didn't even realize, like, there were a lot of fights that me and my brother had that was because of how she was treating us differently, because everybody was coddling him because they were worried about how he would react when my dad left, because he didn't have like the memories that I had, because that year and a half is a big ass difference when you're talking about 5 and 6 years old. So, and everybody just assumed that I was okay. I ended up getting held back in the 7th grade, which is because of everything that was going on. I wasn't aware of why I was reacting the way I was reacting, but also no one cared, which was kind of also upsetting when you realize it later. But my brother never got held back, but he was a mediocre achiever, and it was totally unnecessary because he was doing it just to see if anybody was paying attention.
Damn.
Yeah, he admitted it. He said it to me. Like, he's like, yeah, nah. He's like, I just did stuff. I just was regular I could have did all the classes that you did. I just wanted to see if Mom would make me do it like she made you do it, and she never did. Like, I didn't have choice. I was put in all the AP classes, all the honors classes, all that stuff. I was forced to do debate. Like, I didn't get a choice in it. And my brother was waiting for my mom to force him to do that too, because he was just as smart as I am, and she never did. So he became resentful. So we had like this triangle of trauma that came from, a lot of, I can't even go into really all of the details, but me and my brother had to resolve ours first for me to really understand and get perspective on my mom. I was like, oh, now this explains a hell of a lot. So once we were able to address that, all three of us, and we're really close, by the way, but once we were able to address that, I would say like our lives improved significantly, all three of us, because of it. So it is important for you to kind of revisit your childhood from the perspective that you have now as an adult.
Yes.
And really ask yourself, like, did this affect me more than I realized? And I just ignored it. Because that's what happened. Like, I knew how much my mom affected me, but I was completely unaware because I didn't have any animosity towards my dad. But that I still had abandonment issues. It just manifested differently than it probably would have in a normal child, in another type of child, because of my circumstances. And because I had a unique situation of, I was acutely aware of how much my dad being involved in my life attributed to my success. So like, but there was the other part,
well,
like I said.
I'm going to suggest the same book to you.
Mm-hmm.
Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents.
I would love to read it.
It's very helpful in just like speaking back at you, like, this is why this is why that. And it's not like blamey in that way, but it is very clarifying. And I feel like from the very, 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 very little that I know of you, it's about information, like receiving the information and being able to synthesize the information and process it is very healing and a very like forward moving effort. So
it's very
that
important.
book has been helpful to me.
It's, you know why that type of book and really that type of thought process is important, because once you actually understand that, you understand the majority of the problems in the world and why the world is the way it is, because you have a bunch of children
into talking about these news stories.
Oh yeah, let's get into it.
Because we have a guest that's coming on after. But thank you so much for sharing with us. I feel real special. I feel like we got to have a whole other I feel like we got let into Niko's house.
After the conversation you had before I came on, I'm like, oh man, I gotta talk about it now. Like, it's relevant.
So I switched up one of the stories because it was about David Hogg and Democrats, and I realized when I woke up this morning that I don't care.
Yeah, it's kind of how I feel.
Like, I actually don't care about David Hogg and Democrats and their continued effort at being mediocre, pointless people. So what I want to talk about instead is so something that's going on in Jamaica. And it's been going on in Jamaica, and I want to play a video for you. Sandals Beach Resort has taken up like a large amount of Jamaica's beaches. And this is a global issue that we see, right, with the continual effort to take land from the people of a place. But I wanted to play this video of these Jamaicans talking about it, also because it is an excuse for me to play a Caribbean accent on this show, which is always a joyful time for me and for everybody. And my mom is always like, I really like when you play the Caribbean clips. I really like when you play the Caribbean clips. So here are some of our Jamaican people talking about this.
Originally our beach. We were using all the beach. There was never a crowding issue at a beach. And now, through continued expansion, after expansion, we've always said what benefits Sandals benefits us. But now it is getting to the point where the greed of this organization is disenfranchising the communities. You are becoming a parasite.
This thing is going to affect the fishing industry, right? We tell them plain, I am not approving it. Anything Sandals want, Sandals get. That's the way it goes. Whether we say yes or no, if you say no, you might get the deal. Even with this meeting, I am the president for the group, and I was never informed until Mr. Abla called me last night and told me about this meeting. That is a form of disrespect.
Until this matter is settled, the community will continue to use its beach. And as was the case in some other areas, we will not allow for under any circumstance, any fencing of this property to happen. They're making it unequivocally clear, no, that we will not, because we know what our rights are, and we will not allow for any fencing of the property to take place. We will not allow for under any circumstance, any fencing of this property to happen. They're making it unequivocally clear, no, that we will not, because we know what our rights are, and we will not allow for any fencing of the property to take place. People are watching it around the clock, and if there are attempts to do that, we're going to remove it, because we know what will happen when it's fenced or access will be restricted until this is resolved, and we know the time it will take to resolve this, and we know that concurrently in other instances where these things are being resolved, other things are happening that will further distance us away from having access.
So I was really impressed that folks was like, we're really not here for this, because that seems to be a theme of Black folks around the world, except for, feels like right here.
Oh, in the States? Yeah. That's a different conversation for a different day. But
is it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a conversation for the day too, but it's what's upsetting about Black people in the U.S. is because I feel like they end up warring with each other instead of coalescing with each other. I feel like they are really out trying to prove who's Blacker than the other person, or who has, more, who struggled more, or who deserves more. And I'm like, y'all all are getting screwed over. And it is not even limited to the U.S. It's an international problem. A lot of Caribbeans, for example, that might have problems with what I like to call the family reunion Black people in the South, like that have been here for generations. Affectionately, I reflect because our family's Caribbean too, we're Bayesian. So I get it, but like a lot of Caribbeans are there because of how the United States and these multinational corporations have affected their nations, right?
Yeah.
They have more opportunity in the U.S. It's easier to do business within the U.S. And it isn't even like they want to leave their home. I feel like people really overestimate how much people like want to leave what they're accustomed to, leave their family, leave their native language, leave their customs to go be in a country where every day is a struggle bus and you have to hustle literally every single day in order to survive. Where like you can be making $100,000 a year and be poor in 2 weeks, right? So I feel like that's a huge problem in the U.S. But what we have seen in Caribbean nations, and obviously in a lot of African nations, especially what we're seeing right now in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, people are beginning to recognize their power, Jamaica
Yes.
is a specifically sad situation. I think they only have access to like 1% of all the
Mm-hmm.
beaches on the island.
Yes.
So that's tragic in a place as beautiful as Jamaica is. And the fact that they can't even run those resorts without the Jamaicans working there is even more tragic. And they're not paying them what they're worth. Because I guarantee if those Jamaicans all decided, yeah, we're not going to work anymore, what would happen? They would
Well,
probably
even
have to shut down.
in this video, one of the women is talking about how basically Sandal said, well, we want to take even more of this beach, and in exchange, we're going to give you 50 jobs. And she was like, how is that an equal exchange? First of all, the jobs are going to be low level, low skill jobs. They're going to be low wage jobs. And this beach is priceless. And we barely have
Well,
access to this beach as it is.
I don't. Sorry to interrupt. I don't like to use the word low skilled jobs because a lot of the times the jobs are not actually low skilled. They're just low wage, and they pitch them as being low skilled as the excuse to pay low wages. But a lot of the times, like I always say, bro, one of the hardest jobs to this day, the hardest job I ever had was working at McDonald's. Boy, you know everything I had to do. I had to like take orders to drive through. I had to count money, take orders up front. Bro, I had to back like yo. You got to memorize the screen.
I think what she meant is that.
Yeah, I know what
It's
she meant, but
not-
I'm just saying, like,
I
yeah.
think what she meant in that context is like, I can't take this job and then go get a better job.
Exactly. Because you're going to work longer hours, and you can't work 12
like
hours.
The skill that I have at this job, they're not going to consider to be, a high skill. You know, like
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because what you're saying about McDonald's is absolute facts. But if you go into JP Morgan, like I ran to McDonald's, they're like, but did you go to business school at Columbia?
Exactly. Well, really, so yeah. Or do you know Steven? Because if you don't know Steven, I'm not really sure we can do business with you. Basically, I mean, that's really what it comes to. Look, like I said, I lived in Miami. I graduated from a public Ivy League school. I know. Unfortunately, I know how it goes, and a lot of the times, what your ability does not determine your value, and that is not the meritocracy that we were promised whenever they try to pitch this lie of capitalism. Mm-hmm. Because, like I said, the value of those Jamaican workers, their understanding of the land, because my mom's gone to Jamaica and she talks about like all the stuff that she learned just from talking to them. Like she learned, and she actually went deeper into the island instead of staying on the resort, because of the advice from the people of the resort. So because of the workers that were at the resort. So like that type of experience is invaluable. And if I guarantee if they were paying them what they deserve, there would probably be less complaints, but they're not. And that's the issue. Ain't nobody complaining when you get paid like that.
Speaking of paying people what they deserve, reparations in Decatur. There's a conversation that's about to start happening, which I find interesting just because of the rest of the nation just saying we don't care about blacks. But check this out.
There's a push to make up for past wrongs committed toward black residents in Decatur. That is the goal of the new Reparations Task Force. And News First, Yasmin Alston is live for us.
That's right. Years of research on the history of black residents in the city of Decatur. Stories of thriving communities, but also the destruction of them.
Because there's so many descendants that are still living of those of Beacon Hill. So the task force has a job to do.
A job that will take time and a lot of research, but is worth it for Dr. Nobantu Ankoanda. She is with the Beacon Hill Black Alliance for Human Rights, an organization that has already dedicated years to learning the history of Decatur's thriving black community created in the early 20th century, known as Beacon Hill, and the displacement of its black residents.
Now, whenever I see them deciding they're going to do a reparations task force.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
The House thoughts.
I don't want to hear nothing about no task force unless the task force is determining the exact amount. I'm sorry. We don't need more. They've already said, they said it in that video. They've already spent an inordinate amount of time determining all of the ways the black people from this community have been screwed over. Why do you need to create another task force to re-observe and re-research the research that has already been researched? That makes no sense. And we already have enough research. The only thing, so as a person who studied reparations, so I've studied reparations from the perspective of like trying to convince white people and conservatives, because I've learned that once you can convince a white conservative, especially a white male conservative of something, you can convince anybody. And basically I sat in a room full of conservatives and I actually convinced them to support reparations. And I mentioned redlining, for
Witchcraft.
example.
How did you do this?
So I explained to them that FDR is actually a racist bastard and is largely responsible for the majority of the suffering economically of the black community since he passed the quote unquote Fair Housing Act, right? So the number one cause of divorce, because they always talk about family values, right? The number one cause of divorce is wealth or lack thereof, usually finances, right? The number one way to accrue wealth in the United States is through land ownership and home ownership. In the case of redlining, black people were not allowed to own homes. In other words, we could not pass those homes down to our kids, and they couldn't pass them down to their kids. But more importantly, the number one way to start businesses at that time, because it was very difficult to get collateral, was to take a second mortgage out on your home that you couldn't own if you were black. Literally. So if I was not, because this isn't, they want to talk about slavery, because that's the first thing they always go to talk about slavery. I'm like, bro,
slavery. I'm like, you know how much has
we don't
happened
have to
since
go that far.
slavery?
Like, we don't have to go
Last
that
week,
far.
y'all did some fuck shit. What?
The last case of redlining was prosecuted within the last 2 or 3 years, but it's been illegal since the Nixon era. In other words, literally a Jim Crow policy that's been illegal since the Nixon era was recently prosecuted.
Yes.
So when you want to talk about reparations, we don't have to go back to slavery. We can go back a few years. We can go back a couple of decades. We can look at what happened with Fort Lauderdale, where the police department literally manufactured drugs in their police department just to get the black community out. And then they were found guilty of doing so. But because the black community had already been expelled, there was really nothing that could be done. They got a little bit of money for their troubles. The police department was really never held accountable. And the white people and the wealthy people got exactly what they wanted. So there are examples like federal policy examples all over history. Well, we could talk about Black Wall Street in Oklahoma, obviously, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. By the way,
in Decatur, they had their own. The white people were calling it the slums, but they had their own community, and they had their own nurses and doctors and all the things. And then it was like, okay, we're gonna repatriate this.
They love calling it fancy words, right? Using fancy words to say we stealing y'all shit. That's basically because so they call it the slums, and it's weird how they always like to they always love to rewrite history. Because I lived in North Carolina. Durham was one of the Black Wall Streets. Black Wall Street was a term that's been designated, or is a term that's been designated usually for Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Greenwood. Yeah. But what people don't realize is that was a domino, and it wasn't the only Black Wall Street. That was a domino that started in the 1920s, where Tulsa, Oklahoma was attacked, Chicago was attacked, Durham was attacked. There's a place in Florida attacked. Wilmington, North Carolina was attacked. There's a place in California. I wish I could remember the name. I mean, it happened all over the country. And what was crazy is that they were specifically attacking the businesses and the banks and not the homes. So you got to think about this in the historical context, ladies and gentlemen. This was during the Roaring 20s. So at a time where Black people should have been able to accrue wealth at the same rate as these white people and these banks were doing, the white people were claiming race war and destroying Black wealth at all of these very specific places that were in some ways working together. And the national budget was simultaneously being established. And people don't realize the Fed was being established at the exact same time these Black banks, and specifically Tulsa, Oklahoma, were accruing wealth at an insane rate. And so now you got to imagine, Tulsa, Oklahoma, they don't even have a record of the bank. We don't know what the bank was called, but we know they weren't banking with white people. But there's a reason why, in my opinion, and it's because this is a bank that could have competed with the United States as far as the economy is concerned. So imagine what could have happened if the United States is trying to manipulate interest rates, for example, in loans and things like that, and they're doing these risky investments. And when they try to raise interest rates, the Black people in Black banks who have just as much money and just as much influence say, I don't know why y'all raising it that much. It should be this amount. And now I can go here to get my loan if I'm a Black person. Or better yet, how we like to fund wars or counter-revolutionary conflicts overseas. And now these black banks and these black wealthy people can fund the end to the apartheid in South Africa, can help fund and support Gaddafi at home and overseas, can help fund these revolutionary movements in Latin America that are normally and predominantly ran by black and brown people. They knew if they allow black people the opportunity
Economic
for
sovereignty.
self-determination, that's it. So that's what they did. They used race as the excuse, like you say. It always comes back to white supremacy, but it's because they know what our goals would be if we had the same opportunities as them. We're not asking for handouts. We just ask you to leave us alone. But if you leave us alone, just know we don't fail.
Well, Mr. House, we have our next guest here, so we're gonna have to cut this short. And I feel like we can
No
sit
problem.
here for 4 hours, because you see, I don't have much to say. I'm just like, run with the knowledge, please. And we got a special extra gift of knowledge today, y'all, from just you sharing your vulnerability this morning. So thank you so much for, because a lot of people were like, I got to come back and listen to this. The gems are being dropped. Yes. No, I just want to let y'all know that you can follow Niko at it's Real Niko House, right?
Yep, with a K.
At Real Niko House on Instagram, and you will learn so much. I mean, I'm telling you, you have been a real source of light for just giving perspective that is detailed and fact-based, that is not just simply like, hey, I know how to talk into a camera. So thank you so much for being a journalist and an educator in a time where we really need both at the same damn time. So
I appreciate it.
Obrigada.
Obrigado. Yeah.
Obrigado.
Hey, look.
Hey,
if you're looking for some place to vacation, by the way, I would strongly suggest Brazil. It has it's only second in black population to Nigeria. Like it's a vibe. It's a vibe. The people are lovely. I mean, I visited once and then I decided to move here like the same week. So and now I live here. So
there you go.
I live here and I'm on my third kid. Got my third kid.
All
my baby
right,
girl's home. So
it's working. He's working. Yes.
So
well, thank you so
dope.
much, and I will see you over the Wi-Fi's.
Appreciate you.
On the
Thanks,
internet.
Amanda.
I enjoyed laughing and learning with you. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And tell your friends. Also, listen to the podcast. It's available everywhere pods are casted. Listen ad-free by subscribing to Patreon Amanda Seals. Come on and join the Seals Squad. Views from AmandaLand. Live 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Wednesday, with content on Thursday and Friday at YouTube Amanda Seals TV. Smart, funny, and